My God, not yet.
You're gonna do the intro for the podcast. All right, so I'm not in.
You need to come forward.
I can't because I can't.
Come right up and I had them.
They were touching. I couldn't go any further.
You come forward.
My chair?
Yep. More.
I can't. They're touching the legs as far as they go. We need a wider camera angle. We need like that webcam would be ideal. So now I got to turn though. Yeah.
Ready?
And then do your intro.
Aren't I going to have an intro?
No, don't have to
every
introduce the episode.
Okay.
Yeah, because then I don't have to splice in an intro to the episode. You already have an intro music, but then this will be the intro to this episode.
So, okay, how then? What I'd like to introduce it then, calling it something like so. What did I write on that video description? Do you remember?
Mm-mm.
Shit, it was kind of clever.
Okay, then we'll just have to splice it in later. It's a lot of extra work to do that.
That's okay. We're not live until we on the podcast.
Oh, no, we're live, but not.
But they can't hear us until we flip the.
Yeah, and I hit record. I haven't hit record on that yet.
You haven't?
Mm-mm.
When are you going to do that?
As soon as you're ready.
Okay. Social dilemma. I didn't say social dilemma. I said, next generation of users.
Yeah, so I modified it. And I said next generation of users, TikTok and social media addiction or something.
Okay.
Just go down there to the recorder fielding.
No, you do it. We're not going to chance it. Just you press the record button so we know it gets done, and then we don't blame others for if something happens.
I can see it.
Bad idea.
Okay, that's recording.
It is. Okay. Ready?
In a minute. Oh, we have a table. Perfect.
You need to scooch, bring your chair in a little bit more. Go like this, actually. There.
I can't move it anymore because they're hitting.
Ready?
Yeah. So Sage, go on.
Can you guys
Sage.
take care of the dog, please?
Sage. Oh.
Look how tired they are.
And then, so do your intro and then, so turn your mic on and then do your intro. And then we'll start.
Hey, everybody, it's tomorrow. Welcome to the Pool Party Podcast. And today I have an incredible human, and I get to introduce you again. And I love having this guest on my podcast. It's my husband, Thaddeus Owen, and I love the conversations that he and I have. And what I asked him to do today was come on to the podcast and have a real conversation about social media. And this podcast is actually really near and dear to my heart. I'm going to be sharing some information about things that have happened in my past and how social media has played a big part of some destructive family behaviors in my life. And Thaddeus is always looking and seeking and exploring and expanding. And the conversations that we get to have in private, honestly, usually we're joking around and we're fucking around and being all like funny on my podcast, but this is actually serious. And in this episode, we have our children, because this is so near and dear to my heart, and I feel vehemently about this subject matter. We have our children in the audience, and so we have our Fielding and we have an Artemisia, and they're listening to what we are going to be teaching, what Thaddeus is going to be teaching everybody today about social media, about this new Wild West exploration, experiment of TikTok, of Facebook, and not to go down, and I want to reiterate this too, like not to go down and be in a deep well of a rabbit hole, but to explore and really look at as an observer from like 60,000 foot perspective, like how are we managing this? How are parents supposed to navigate this new Wild West territory of social media, and what is it doing to our children, and what's it doing to their brains, and how is it stealing, like they're living their life away from them, and what can we do about it, right? And so like I want Thaddeus to just share everything he's uncovering and make us more aware on a spiritual level of what is happening, because you guys, this is a slow drip, and the slow drip has been like bringing out the Nintendo, bringing out the Atari, all the video games in our past. And here we are, right? And what's our life going to be like in 10 years? So we're going to get into it. We're going to deep dive, and we're going to be observers, and we're going to teach our children. I'm going to try not to have too many tears, but this is actually really close to my heart. So Thaddeus, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, taking time out of your busy life. I know we all have busy lives, and I just think that how you synthesize information is really important and really spectacular. And a lot of people can learn just even listening to you for 5 minutes. People are like enamored by what you say and how you say it. So thank you so much for coming.
All right. Great to be here.
All right. So let's get into it. So Thaddeus and I are going to have a conversation. And if anybody on YouTube wants to add a comment, put it in the chat and put it in all caps. And here we go. All right. So dopamine, the new next generation of users. So back when we were kids in the 90s, when somebody talked about being a user, it was someone who's addicted to heroin, in my mind. Like that's the first thing that comes to my mind. And what happens when we are users, right? Or when somebody is a user, they're doing something different to their brain chemistry, right? So dopamine comes into play, serotonin, all these different brain chemicals. So being a user, how is that playing out in this next generation of new users? So let's get into it.
Well, I think what we're talking about is when, like in the 80s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, users were drug users. Not just heroin, but like people that used or abused drugs for some purpose, and typically an addictive use was considered a user. But now everyone, not just kids, but adults included, is considered a quote unquote user of different technologies online. And those can be anything from video games to social media. And I think that's the convergence we're talking about today, is this convergence right now of the social media space and video games, where, there's this culture being created of people that quote unquote use or consume the information and the things that are being put in front of them without being producers of anything. And that concept, that was much harder when we were children, because there might have been video games, but typically they weren't all encompassing video games that sucked us in all day long. Now, that might have been true for a small handful of people, but certainly not a majority. We were still getting outside, engaging with books, engaging in discourse and discussions, and learning in school in a way that took time. And now the video game and social media culture are bite-sized pieces of 10 to 50 seconds of information before the next thing is presented. And I think that culture that's being created is what we're going to talk through today, and how that is affecting everybody, not just kids.
Yeah, it's insidious, right? Like it's not just our children, but I think that our children are growing up with not knowing the before and after. Like we talk about this all the time too. Like we get to experience in our lives, like the before and the after of this new generation, right, of social media. And we know what it's like growing up without it. So we have that, just level of discernment, and our kids are growing up without that. So how do you think that is, like, what's the difference in that? And like, how do you see that playing out?
So yeah, and the way that I'm thinking about this is start with social media. So you're like a user of Facebook or a user of TikTok, and each of those platforms have billions of users each. And we did not have such platforms when we were younger. So we had, some video games, but because there wasn't online connectivity, whatever video game you had in your, bedroom or your family room, that was what you were limited to. You couldn't go out and download another one in 10 seconds. You had 4, maybe 8 video games, and like unless you wanted to play them over and over and over, you would play them and complete them and go do something else. And they weren't as engaging and as exciting. So what we experienced is we would sit down with a book. And I mean, just for example, when I first started working in my career life, I did not have necessarily the internet in the way that we have it today. So for example, if I had to look up why this thing at work, so I worked in pharmaceuticals at first, so I had to make these large batches of pharmaceutical drugs, and they would fail, and they would turn colors. They'd supposed to be white and they turned pink, or everything that was supposed to be mixed together would fall apart, and you couldn't sell that. So I had to figure out why. And there would be a library at work, and we had to go to the library and pull books down and look up why something failed and read about it and learn about the theory of how mixing actually occurs and apply that to our circumstance by thinking about it, writing things down, drawing diagrams, talking with other people to figure out what their experience was of how they fixed something like that in the past. So this physical, tactile reviewing, reading, and gaining knowledge was done in long periods of intense concentration. And now what's happening is we are seeing, and it's very noticeable to us in the older generation now, because when we were younger, we didn't have such things, that everything is coming in bite-sized pieces in 30-second sound clips. And what is being pushed in those sound clips is not necessarily what you as a man or a woman want to know. So for example, I needed to figure out why my pharmaceutical batch was failing. So I had to go into study and figure that out. And now I had that knowledge forever, and I can use it in other situations and circumstances. For example, I want to make a batch of soap at home because I no longer work in pharmaceuticals, but based on the knowledge of what I learned by doing that study, I can figure out how to make a better batch of soap because I learned something that was significant that I can take with me forever. Now what's happening is when we get a 30-second soundbite, followed by another 30-second soundbite, followed by a 10-second soundbite on a platform like TikTok or a YouTube Reel, or
Short.
YouTube Short and an Instagram Reel, then what's being fed to us is not something we're going out and searching for. There's an algorithm embedded within the social media that reads your personality and pushes a narrative for you to consume that they think will keep you on the social media app longer, not necessarily something that's going to give you information that helps you in life. And that is the distinguishing point where, let's just say that somebody wants to push that there is a war in Bulgaria, and they want everyone to know about it and to be thinking about that. I don't know anything about Bulgaria personally, and I wouldn't go out and start researching it unless there was some really specific reason. And if I did, I would go and find books, I would find encyclopedias from earlier times to learn about its history. But instead, this war in Bulgaria, which is not what's happening. I don't know of any war in Bulgaria, but this is an example if they wanted to push the narrative of a war in Bulgaria to the consciousness and have everyone focused on that, because focus is energy, and everything in this world at its fundamental level is energy. And if all the energy of the people is focused on one thing, there's magic in that. So now all the memes and all the presenters that are being pushed to your 30-second sound bites on your social media over and over are putting these 30-second snapshots of the Bulgarian war and the colors of the war. And that starts getting embedded in your subconscious and your conscious, because if I show you a picture of a pink elephant, you can't not think about a pink elephant. You will be thinking about that. And so when you're being shown the sound bites, number one, or video bites, I would call them now. And I think TikTok's actual company name is Dance Bite, BYTE. So when you're being shown
Bite dance.
Bite dance, thanks. So when you're being shown these clips and they're quick, number one, for people like us that have been trained in longer form learning and focus, we have the ability to focus for long periods of time and digest information and critically understand how that information applies to our life and what we want to do with it and put pieces together. When you are shown 30-second sound bites over and over from the time you were young, you no longer have the ability to digest long form information, which means you have no ability to put reasoning together over the long term of how things apply, how they fit together. You are being shown flashes of information that come in and out and begin to subtly program your subconscious into what it is you think about, what it is you want to do in the future, and the way your future will be shaped.
I'm going to take a teaching moment for a second, and I'm going to encourage our children, who I can see they're writing notes at this juncture. I would prefer that you guys look up and you're watching Thaddeus and you're watching us. Feeling, are you hearing, listening? Yeah. As he's still writing. So stop writing. Okay. I want you guys present, and I want you to be thinking about and really listen and let it sink in. Because when you're writing, you're doing something separate than complete focused listening. Okay. So I want you guys focused listening, and then in between, like if you guys have to write something down, just write one thing, and then you can go back to it later. Okay. So if you really needs to write something down, or you can ask us later, but I want you guys here focused and present. Okay. So we're dealing with TikTok. Let's just take TikTok for a moment. And you guys both are on TikTok, right? Yep. Fielding and Artie. Okay. So they have these profiles on their phones, and TikTok is a Chinese company, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then, so how are they manipulating our children? And Fielding, I like another teaching moment. Sorry, you guys. You know what? Because I'm a teacher, and this is live, and this is real life, and my podcast is about being a real human. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend that, I'm not a parent, and I'm not an active, like, conscious parent, because I teach people about conscious parenting. So we're right here, and I want you guys, the whole part of this is you guys listening to this, right? And letting it sink in and really hearing every moment of it. So please stop writing and be present. Thank you. Okay. So back to TikTok. TikTok is a Chinese run company, and it's ByteDance.ly. ByteDance. And
it used to be Musical.ly or music.ly.
Music.ly. Okay. Can you talk to us, Thaddeus, about to the children about the psychological profiling and the addiction factor of TikTok, just a little bit more in depth, in not just all the platforms, but that one specifically?
Okay, so TikTok has over 1 billion users. That's a lot of users. When you imagine, they tell us there's 7 billion, roughly, I think there's 6 billion something people in the world. So that's a lot of people, like, in the world. There's only 300 and some million in the US alone, and that includes men, women, and children. So a lot of users are on that platform. And what I'm told is there are 1 billion videos watched or produced every single day just on TikTok.
Okay, let's let that sink in for a minute. 1 billion videos every single day that are watched by TikTok users. You'll remember that. You don't need to write it down.
So what I'm thinking with the 1 billion number is there's so many videos, so much data, but is anyone actually learning anything and forwarding their actual self in this life. So when I think about, so let's just go back to TikTok, but when I think about living a life on this plane, planet, sphere, matrix, whatever we're in, when you get to our age, when you're closer to 50 than you are any other number, and you're getting closer to that end part of the lifetime we spend here in this particular life, what will you have accomplished when you get to that point? So will you get there and have watched TikTok videos and played video games and then get to the end of your life and wonder what the life was all for and what actually happened? Because most kids, they say that they look at user profiles. Again, they keep using this word user, right? Like a drug user, but they look at user profiles from the age of 16 and up. And then they use those as the numbers of people using TikTok, for example. But my son is not 16, he's much younger, and he's on TikTok. So I'm sure many of his friends, or maybe all of his friends, are most of your friends on TikTok? So the answer is yes. So that's at the age group of 12. So the people using TikTok are not just adults or young adults or older teenagers, it's very young people. So when you grow up using those applications, typically, just like what I see with what I call the older people in our neighborhood and our lives, they read the newspaper still to this day. Like, I'm never going to read a newspaper, number one, because the information in it is largely incorrect unless it's purely local. And even then, we have friends who were in the stories that were being talked about and said that's not actually what happened. So why would I read that information? But those people grew up on reading the newspaper and they still do it. So if you're growing up as a TikTok quote unquote user, when you're in your 20s and 30s, where are you going to get your news and information? From that same platform you're comfortable with today. So they're basically growing an entire generation of people that will be TikTok. I'm trying to think of a better word to say than users, but TikTok information gatherers on how they view the world.
Wait,
so
what did we hear earlier today? Something about the eaters. What was that?
Well,
useless eater.
Yeah, so we haven't gotten into that.
Okay.
But so as you acquire your information in these sound bites that are pushed to you, and why does somebody on TikTok make a video?
Wait, are you saying soundbite? Are you saying like the video?
Yeah.
Okay, so isn't it? Why would it be just soundbite?
Well, because it's what you're hearing in terms of news, but it's also what you're seeing in terms of imagery.
Okay.
And typically what's being pushed is what's popular. And that's what people want to see. And what's popular is what's presented to influencers, and they get paid to present those ideas. And then other people recreate them and push them further. So largely, in my opinion, what people are seeing on TikTok is what you are being controlled to see and consume. And we know that that's a fact. Number one, you can look up news. This is the year 2022. So earlier this year, the White House in the United States was paying and telling Instagram influencers what they wanted them to say on Instagram. So these are the people that have millions and millions of followers that then everyone else consumes and republishes that information as their own. So that information you're seeing on TikTok and the social media platforms over and over is typically what people in control of the way the world is moving want you to see and to consume, because they're paying the influencers who get paid to be on social media. They get paid by companies to market and advertise ideas and products to you. They want you to become consumers of the mindset in the way that people want the world to go. And they want you to be consumers of products that they're selling, because there's a really good quote, and I think it was Bernays who invented certain forms of advertising. And he's saying that as we can influence all these people to buy things, their money, their ability to have freedom in their life disappears. Right now, we have so much freedom to fly all over the world and do whatever. You could make money working at McDonald's, making $20 an hour these days. And you could buy a car, have an apartment, and travel the world after working for 2 years as a young person with no kids. But instead, the consumerism that's pushed through the advertising and marketing, largely now through social media, gets you to spend all of your excess money that you could be using for things to give you a life and buy trinkets, cheap trinkets that fill your homes and your lives with things that they want you to have, or ephemeral experiences like watching a movie, paying for these movies and these services and these apps that are increasingly costing money. And then you have no money left over for actual freedom. So TikTok, going back to TikTok, it's one of the most insidious social media programs, which is why we're talking about it. And that's because, number one, it's Chinese based, and China gets to not play by Western laws and rules around human rights and around extracting data for political or mental progression of the way they want things to happen.
Okay, why is that? Like, what is the? Can you explain that a little bit more? Because like even I don't quite get that.
In the U.S., there are laws on the way that you can use private data.
Oh, private data. Okay.
And we also have human rights laws that don't let you use child labor, for example, or forced labor. China doesn't have those laws. So China can take your data, your private data, through their app, TikTok, and they can use it in ways that would not be allowable in the Western countries.
Okay, I just saw my daughter look at me and go like, she's confused. Like she was like, what? Okay, so why does that matter? Because sometimes even I go back and forth on like, well, I don't really do anything. Like I'm not like a criminal, you know what I mean? I'm just like, why do I care so much that they're taking my data? But then other times I'm like, wait, that's my personal information. And why is it okay? And then we can get into the opt-in stuff too in a little bit, but what's like the biggest thing that these people that you're teaching right now, like what do they need to know about that, Thaddeus? Like what's the most important thing?
So you're saying you have nothing to hide, so who cares? And now you truly have nothing to hide because you gave away all your data.
Right.
So you have no privacy. You have no privacy. Your phone comes with you to the bathroom. Your phone comes with you to bed. Your phone comes with you in your car. It's the number one thing that people freak out about if they leave home without it. Not their wallet, not their spouse or their boyfriend, their phone.
Baby, I would freak out if you didn't come with me.
Not as much as your phone.
Maybe.
So people say they have nothing to hide, and now truly you can't hide anything because you're willingly giving away private data, and it is absolutely meaningless if the world never changes from today. It will be used to market you products because they have built a profile on you that they now understand how you think, what you think about, and what you're going to want tomorrow. So they can present that to you to purchase, to use your hard-earned money to buy those things so that you never actually obtain your freedom because you're too busy spending your money on the stuff they market to you. Now that's today. In the future, if we have more of a state like China, where your social credit score determines whether you have money, or you can ride on public transportation, or whether your car will actually start when you push the start button in the morning. That data that you've already given away because you have nothing to hide will be used against you when those things come into play in the future.
That's terrifying. Like I just saw the look in my daughter's eye and she's like, what? Like I didn't know this.
Everything's going to electric vehicles. Those vehicles have kill switches and they're connected via the internet to central computers at all times, which means if your social credit score is not where it needs to be, you cannot operate your car.
Can you just talk super quick about social credit score? Because I don't think these guys even know the concept. And it's not like this is a joke or anything either, you guys. Like this is actually present in our world today. Like it's in place. It's already in place. This is not like some time off in the future.
So this is how and I don't like to say people in control, but there are people at higher levels that control the data. So let's just say the people in control of the data, they get to create a computer program that gives you a rating. Just like on Airbnb, you get like a 5-star rating as an Airbnb guest or a 2-star rating. Or you look at Google reviews, that rating will be next to your name, and it will determine in the future, potentially, if this system comes into place, which again, it's already in place in China. Once that system, or when that system is in place, that score will determine whether you have money in the bank account, how much money you make in your job, whether you can drive your car, whether you can enter certain buildings, or whether you can even leave your home. all can be based on that score, based on data you're giving away today. Why? Because TikTok specifically in the user agreement, which nobody reads, and even if you do, it's so long. Number one, they are allowed to take your facial profile and store it and use it, which means they can create AI called deepfake. And there's something in Facebook called deep face, but there's a deep fake, which is an AI version of you. And they are allowed to take that data, a Chinese-based company, and utilize it any way they want. Number two.
Wait, so they could make a CGI?
They could. It's called deep fake. You can look that up. I just was looking it up before this.
Okay.
And I'm like, I thought deep fake was like something fictitious, but it's actually what TikTok uses. And Facebook uses the deep face, which is the facial recognition software. But TikTok goes further and they take your face that moves and shows different expressions in a video format, a live format, not a photo. And they get to keep and render that in any way they want. That's just one way that they're taking your private data forever. Now, with the AI they have today, they could then show you with your voice, because that's the other thing that they are allowed to own is your voice that's captured in the TikTok software. So they get to capture your video image of your face and your voice. Now they can animate an AI version of you. And let's just say they wanted to show you robbing a bank. It's your voice, it's your face, it's on camera. There is no denying that that would be you if you don't have witnesses of where you are at any one time. That's just a for example. They can do things like that now because they own your voice and your face and your movement. The other thing that they collect that ties into social credit scoring is they collect everything you do on the app, not limited to what you do that you post. That means if, let's just say you're 12 and you're fooling around with friends on TikTok and you compose a message or a video and you're just screwing around and you're like, I'm going to make this video about, the Nazi flag and about how Nazis are awesome and we're going to kid around, but we're never going to publish it. We just keep deleting it. We just keep writing it. We think it's funny and we delete it. They are allowed to capture things you delete. And they're allowed to capture things that you compose in draft and erase immediately without posting. That is allowable for them. It not allowable. They capture that in the data they collect about you is drafted TikTok videos that you don't post or ever hit send, but that you in fact delete with no intention of posting. That is now going to be built into your profile that they're collecting for you.
Do you guys see the look on my face right now? Those of you on the podcast, their children are nodding yes because my jaw is literally on the ground. So you read this in the...
I just read this in, I think it was the Wired. It was either, there were like 3 articles specifically on TikTok. So TikTok was banned by Biden administration for the use by TSA and the military because it's so insidious that they are not allowed to use TikTok.
Wait a minute. Our government banned this for the military, anyone in the military and in the government.
TSA, Transportation Security Administration.
Because it's so insidious and data collection.
And unsafe because it's a Chinese-based company for secrets and collecting of data.
And this company can take all that information from your drafts, deleted videos, and do anything they want with it, with your face, with, that's okay. Feeling, could you hit that light, the middle, it's the middle button? Yep. Okay. And do whatever they want with it. They can make a CGI person, an AI, artificial intelligence person with your face. Like, this is really interesting and creepy. That is. And it's so important that we're getting this information out. So just keep going.
So people can look up deep fake. And I thought that was a fictitious book, and I think it is, but it was in, I think it was the Wired magazine. It was one of those 3 that I looked at. And so it was like, what's wrong with TikTok and why do people think it's so dangerous?
Okay, so wait, is it just TikTok that can do that? Or can Facebook do the same thing? Can Instagram and YouTube?
That's not in their user agreements. It's in the user agreement of TikTok that they own drafts and composition of your TikTok videos that you decide to not post and just erase.
Okay, so here's where my mind is going right now. That's just what they're putting in the user agreement. What are they doing with stuff that they're not even putting in there?
So there's two things that we presume are happening. Number one, we were throwing around this term from the Crow 777 episode around social media. They had a 2-part episode, so 4 hours, where they went through all the social media from Facebook to Instagram to TikTok. It was really good. And what they used was this term dossier. So there's a dossier, which is just a file. It's a file created about you specifically and everything you've done that's in the public sphere. And that file will then have this TikTok data, your Facebook profiles, all these things. But with TikTok, they get your voice, they get your video of your face, and they get things that you deleted and never intended to publish. So if you're using their platform at all, they now have access to that. So that file continues to grow. And then if they ever want to use that file for something against you, they've got a lot of information. That information is also composed of other people's cell phones. So for instance, if you went to the grocery store and you did not bring your cell phone, and someone might have a video of you as part of your private file that is being kept in the data sphere that shows you at the grocery store. Why? Because someone else was filming a video at the grocery store of themselves for TikTok and you were in the background, or for Instagram, or for Facebook, or they just took it out and snapped a photo, or they just brought their phone out of their pocket to use the calculator app. But there's software in there that probably is using your video camera to capture data, and it saw you. And because there's facial recognition software through Facebook and TikTok, they know who you are. So they captured your image, they identified exactly who that person was, they added to their file of where they were, what they were doing, and you never posted anything about that. So that's number one, is just the video apps are allowed to triangulate. And somebody did a research project just with Instagram, and they showed someone taking a selfie of them on Instagram. So here's their selfie on Instagram. It just shows their Instagram photo that's on their profile. Mm-hmm. And then they created an AI to go through every other Instagram and Facebook video and photo from the same day in the same location. And they found somebody else's phone showing a photo of you in the background taking your Instagram selfie for that photo. So that means that you are on other people's phones and they are providing data about you unintentionally into that private file. Number two, your phone.
And they can do that because the camera's on both sides.
The camera's on both sides, but that person might have been taking a photo of, let's just say it's a sporting event, and they take a photo of the field. But there you are in the stands in their photo taking your Instagram photo. There's so many cameras in people's hands, and people are videoing and taking photos so often that they can almost always find you taking your Instagram selfie from somebody else's phone of something they published, and it's publicly available.
That is so creepy.
There's a whole article where this lady did that for a research project, and it is crazy how they could show that.
Do you know where people can find that?
They'd have to look it up. They could probably just search for.
What are the keywords?
I would just search for Instagram selfie photo from someone else's phone. Something like that. I don't remember the name of the article, but I remember it was like, holy cow, like you can see data of yourself because of the recognition software that's out there, where they tag you in a photo of someone else that doesn't even know you. So the second thing that they're able to do is, unlike most people, we keep our phones in airplane mode in a Faraday cage pouch, or we don't bring them with us. Most people have their phone on them always, and it's on Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, and cellular data at all times to never miss any possible notification on any system that they're around.
Well, wait, don't forget your wrist. Oh my God, they just travel around with it everywhere they go.
That's the Apple Watch, yeah. But think about your phone being connected to Bluetooth. That means it's discoverable by other devices. You don't just have Bluetooth on to find a speaker that you connect to. Once your Bluetooth is enabled on your phone, other devices can discover your Bluetooth and connect to it without you knowing. And that happens all the time. And that ability of the Wi-Fi, the cell data, and the Bluetooth, Think about in a crowd of people at a supermarket or a sporting event, how many cell phones are in pockets? And that means my cell phone, if it was in my pocket and turned on, is connecting to the person next to me who I don't know. And they're talking to each other saying, this person is here, they're next to this other person, they're both at this sporting event. That data is being captured. So they know whose cell phone is registered to who. They know that your Bluetooth and this other person's Bluetooth were directly next to each other, and probably how close and where you were at any given time of the day. That means when you travel around, of course, with your Apple Watch, but your cell phone in your pocket turned on, now not only is the GPS tracking location of your cell phone feeding data, but the Bluetooth version is telling who you were next to, who you were talking to, where you were at all moments of the day. And the TikTok draft you deleted with the Bluetooth left on your cell phone telling everyone where you were is feeding your social profile.
Did you guys have any idea, my audience, any idea about any of this stuff? Are you learning so much right now? This is such good information. Daddy, so at what point do we go, if we were just sitting here and not even podcasting, I'd be asking you this question. At what point do we go so far into the rabbit hole? Like, are we down in the bog right now with all of this stuff? Or is this information like it's been suppressed and we just don't know because it's such a new frontier? Like, what is happening to our freedom? I have so many questions. Like, how do we navigate in and out of the bog? And could you explain the bog just a little bit so people can get the different perspectives on, like, I don't know, just like going down conspiracy rabbit holes, right? And coming out for a breath of fresh air and going, okay, I'm not going to attach too much to this because I have a level of discernment and detachment from some of the stuff. Or is this something like, do you feel it's imperative that, like our audience needs to know this stuff, other parents need to know this stuff? Like, what's the balance here? Is it?
So the question is, like, the bog, you can get stuck chasing conspiracy theories all the way to their end without furthering your life path and your life goals. And you need to ascend yourself and work on yourself and your spirit rather than chase conspiracy theories. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is all information that is true and is out there, and you can read it in the manuals, the user agreements of all the software. The social credit score is already here in China.
Is it in other countries too? Sorry, I didn't cut you off. Is it just China? Or
so the social credit score is already here in China. It is already, I believe it was France that has a law now for implementing social credit score. And it is already in the United States. So we already have a social credit score here. I think it's called My Life. You can look it up and you can find your social credit score. I don't know that it was worth you searching yourself because it feeds more data to the system when you find yourself and self-identify who you are in that system. It makes the AI better, but you already have a social credit score here. It's just not turned on for daily use where you're seeing it as publicly as you would in China. Now, you also already have a social credit score here in this country because if you use the Uber app or the Lyft app, you're already being rated. If you use the Airbnb app, you already have a social credit rating in their system where you have reviews listed about you as a person, and you have a star system rating you. So you can say all day long that, oh, it's a conspiracy theory, it's never coming. It's already here. And in the future, it is going to be more available for everyone to get that data. And I guarantee that it will be used for you to access things in the future, which means if you're not paying attention to what you're doing today around the social credit score, then it's going to be a huge challenge for you to navigate the world of the future.
Okay, so what if there's, another group of people that are going, well, isn't that a good thing? And this is not my opinion, but is this a good thing for society to like keep tabs on each other? And like, are there benefits to that? Or is that like, do you see it in your perspective? Do you see it as a complete, extraction of our freedom? Or like, where do you kind of land on that?
Who gets to make the decision of what gets a higher rating than another, and who gets to make the decision of what's a negative rating? So people's opinions begin to play into that. It's a subjective thing. Who says that today talking negatively about, let's just say, the Ukraine is a bad thing? That's a bad thing. So you could have a lower social credit rating if you have something negative to say about the Ukraine and something positive to say about Russia. But was it World War I or World War II, when Russia was our ally, you would have lots of good things to say because we were working with them to get something done. So that means your opinion of something could lead you to a higher score or a lower score based on whoever writes the algorithm, the way that they determine what's right and wrong. Now one small group of people get to make the determinations of what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. And that acceptability gets you access or removes access to daily life.
And daily life means like the God-given things that we not should, but like how do you like render that? Like, shouldn't we all have access to grocery stores and schooling and like all of that? Like, how do you know what I'm saying?
Well, they don't in China. We already know that. And if you're in prison because you did something that wasn't socially acceptable, like sold weed, then you also don't have access to those things. So in the future,
Right.
You don't have to have a prison that locks you behind fences. You have a prison that bars you from entry into public life, which is use of the internet, use of your vehicle, and use of the services that are provided for us, like grocery stores.
And that's already in place in China. And then you said coming to France, or it's in France, and then
I think it's France. Yeah. So
hold on a second. You guys let that sink in for just a second. Like let's take a moment and like just let that sink in and feel that in your body, feel it in your brain, and think about like where are we headed? Where is all of this taking us? Because we are so busy in our daily lives and this stuff gets skipped over, right? Or we don't know about it. People don't want you to know about it. And how does it affect you now that you know about it? Like how do we cognate that? Right? And like, what can we do about it? I guess I'd like to get into some of those things toward the end, Thaddeus, but do you have more you want to talk about with Facebook in the insidiousness of that?
So it's just being aware of someone who is on those social media platforms.
Yeah, but everybody's on them.
Not everybody.
Just if you're not on them, then you like live out in the country somewhere and you barely have any communication. Like you're not in business. So it's like people in older generations or like babies. They're the only people that aren't on them.
Well, not exactly, but that's
okay,
like,
so tell me I'm wrong.
Yeah. So for instance, like the company that I work for is probably not on Facebook and they still make plenty of money.
Wait a minute, but everybody in the company's on it.
But the company itself is not using it for their business. So if you're a business, I would argue you definitely don't have to be on Facebook. Like the drywall contractor that I just hired to do some drywalling and give me a quote, he's definitely not on Facebook, Instagram, or anywhere. Like doesn't exist. So I think it's possible. And I know that like Crow from Crow 777 Radio is not on any social media platforms. The Crow show is because let's say Rose might post something there, but Crow himself has no profiles on any of those. So
well, hold on. So, but he uses the internet
for sure,
and his voice is on the internet.
Yep, I'm not saying the internet. I'm saying social media platforms.
Okay.
So I think you have to make a choice of Facebook. If you saw what happened in the last month, Facebook lost tons of market share and billions of dollars to TikTok. So you can see that Facebook is the number one social media platform today, but it will be eclipsed almost certainly by something like TikTok or whatever the new version of TikTok is in the very near future. So you don't have to participate in those things. And potentially in the future, if you're not somebody who wants to utilize those services, you might not get a social credit score potentially formed for you, which means you wouldn't get access to those services without the score.
How does that sit with you guys? How does it sit with you not getting access to grocery stores, to gas, to being able to like go places? And I mean, if that's not the biggest strike against freedom, I don't even know.
So we'd have to decide, like, at some point, some people might have to decide if you want access to those services or not. You certainly don't need access to the gas station, the grocery store to live and to eat and to move around.
But you do to be comfortable.
No, not necessarily. The Amish don't have those things. And I would say that they're pretty comfortable. They live a different lifestyle. And so there will be a group of people that decide they don't want to live in the wall of Saudi Arabia, which is whatever, 180 story tall building that is horizontally created for miles, 2 buildings facing each other. So everything happens in between. It's neat to watch. One of the princes of Saudi Arabia, that's his design, is put everyone inside a walled city, which is kind of crazy.
Sounds awesome.
But there'll be people living outside of that walled city that don't get access to those services, and they would live a different lifestyle. And I don't know that it will come to that much of a dichotomy or not, but there's definitely Jason Brashears from Archaic's channel. If you watch some of his stuff, he's blown up recently, and his idea, based on all the data he can find in historical books from hundreds of years old up to present, is that there is going to be an event in 2023 that recreates the internet with access controlled only via something like a social credit score or a central bank digital currency. So these types of things are becoming more of a reality as things like cryptocurrency and internet access gets tokenized, so that you need a special token in order to access anything on the internet. That way they can more easily track you and what you're doing for, quote unquote, the safety of others.
Okay, so how does that play into your phone with apps and stuff? Is that completely different, or is that?
Well, your phone is tied to you, so you wouldn't get access to anything on your phone without that same tokenization. So your phone wouldn't turn on without you putting the password in and it connecting to all the data. And when it connects to that data, it gives you access to anything or nothing based on what your score is or how many central bank digital currency credits you're allocated that day.
How far off do you think that is? A year?
Well, we think that the internet, which used to be super free, so back in 2001 to 2008, I could search anything on the internet. Like for example, like one of the things I liked to search is when I would travel, I'd be like, what's cool to do in Sedona, Arizona? And I would get results from like random people all over the world that had been to Arizona and had like a stupid little blog, not a stupid little blog, but just like some little blog that like someone had read like five times. That's it. I would find their stuff and they'd be like, I did these things and it was so amazing. But now when you do a search for what's cool to do in Sedona, Arizona, you only get sites that are monetized. You can't get those little tiny sites of like some person on Blogspot just saying like what was cool they did in Sedona, Arizona. All you get is a monetized site that is selling you something from an affiliate link, or they're trying to sell you advertisements that are built into their website. Just think about recipe websites. Find one recipe website that doesn't make you scroll through so many pages in order to get to the recipe. And then they're trying to sell you something and there's pop-ups. It's crazy, but that never used to happen. And now you can't really find those things. Even if you wanted to find them, they're unfindable. So in the future, the next level of internet tech would be to not even allow you to access the internet without a specific token that follows you around everywhere. And you're only allowed to visit either certain sites, depending on your score or depending on how much you pay to access.
Did you guys have any idea about any of this stuff? Do you even know about social credit scores or anything like that? Do you talk about it in school?
No, we do not talk about that in school.
Isn't that interesting that they don't teach the kids about that in school?
They don't teach the kids anything useful except reading, writing, and some math, I'd say.
How to do taxes? Really helpful.
That is, the son just said, hey, can they teach me how to do taxes? Which, why the fuck don't they teach you how to do taxes in school? Like,
They don't even
insane.
teach you about taxes
No.
and what they really do and
It's,
the history of it.
I mean, it's insane that they don't, but like there's reasons for that. And
they don't teach you about self-confidence in school. They don't teach you how to actually learn something in school on your own. They don't teach you about concentration and focus and meditation in school. Nothing.
And those are all the things like I taught my kids outside of school. So I gave them the emotional intelligence 101 before and after school. So I would kind of unschool them while they're still in school because I didn't have options to take them out. But I knew homeschooling was always a deal. Okay, let's just back up a little bit before we get too caught up in the bog, right? And I mean, I love this information. I love that this is coming out and we're sharing this. What about like your history and I want people to hear about like how did you play video games as a child, and how did you see? Can you go back into your history and look at it from an observer point of view and go, here's what I did, and here's what I want for my children, and what have you learned, and then what can I teach them? Or is that, my questions aren't very clear today, but can we talk about that in like a family setting here? Like what did you go through playing video games? Because you obviously played a lot more video games than I did, and we're not sitting here today, you guys, saying like I have TikTok on my phone. My daughter wanted to put it on my phone, and so, well, I mean, you kind of wanted me to do video or whatever. Oh, I asked you to do it, didn't I? Yeah. I asked her to help, but she does it all the time. So I'm like, I want to be part of her life still, right? But how do we go back into our history too? And Thaddeus, I'm curious about yours. And I just want people to I want you to give people a little history of like, how did you use video games and how do you see it playing out differently today with your kids? And then what are we going to do about it? So this is big, right? This is a big topic. It's a big source of contention. And how do we use these things, but still, I was on a phone call today with my friend Washayla, and she was like, my son does the TikTok thing, but he also plays chess. He also, does coding. He does other things that use his critical brain and inspires him, right, to do other things, to be a creator. So how is it like, because I feel like the way your brain works, the way you can synthesize information, like it's pretty incredible. And so how did you not get sucked down that hole? Because there's other people out there, you guys, that are sitting in their parents' basement gaming, right? And that's what they're going to do with their life. And maybe that's their path, whatever. But like, that's not what we want for our children's path. And if that's what you want, like, you'll make that happen. But how do you not let that happen to you, right? And get caught up in the dopamine hits and all of the emotional and psychological effects of all these devices that are manipulating you and you don't even know it, right? Oh, I'm so aggravated by this. Like, I'm feeling it in my body and I'm annoyed by it. And I feel like it's literally stealing our children from us. And this is part of what my book is about, conscious parenting. So how do we render that? Can you throw down what's coming up for you and like in your past? And
so, number one, video game playing in the 80s was always like a thing you did in a group of people.
You did in a group of people?
Yep. It was typically not something you did alone. So you'd have a group of people, video games were very new. We would play together as friends, and then we'd get outside. And of course, once you beat a video game, it wasn't so much fun to play. So we could sit for hours and hours, but typically the time we would sit and play video games was after dinner, and we would play until 3 or 4 in the morning. We all day long, if it was a weekend, we were outside, we were doing things, we were riding bikes, we were in the woods, and then we'd come in, we play video games all night and to beat a game, like between 3 or 4 of us. And I didn't have a lot of video games because I just didn't have the money to afford them. But if I had a lot of video games, I probably would have played a little bit more. But none of my friends were sitting around playing video games all day. So that's not what I was doing. Fast forward to in my 20s, they started creating video games that you play by yourself on a laptop. And they became much more addicting. So for example, I bought one. It's called Diablo, and I played it every second that I was home from work, and I wouldn't do anything else. And I realized very quickly that was stealing so much time from me in getting anything done, like going for a run, connecting with other people, getting out into the community, and like going to an event. So I deleted the game and I never bought another one, literally, because I could see the addictive nature. And then fast forward a little further, those games went online. So now you're playing with other people in an online immersive environment, which is even more addicting, but all by yourself in your home. To today, where you sit and you look at the memes on your phone in your bedroom by yourself, and then you play an online video game that can render and change graphics in real time for you to keep you addicted, and you may never leave that room. And that is the lifestyle that many younger kids are now kind of running towards. So one of the things that was talked through in the Crow episode, and also you can look on mainstream media today to find this guy, and it's like Uri Hargrave or something. I'm sorry, I cannot remember his name, but he doesn't use the useless eater concept. But the useless eater is somebody who just consumes resources, but doesn't produce anything of value for humans or the world. You sit around, you kind of do your own selfish things by consuming what other people are pushing in front of you. And what purpose do you have of being in this world? So they call those people useless eaters. And the theory is, this is the conspiracy rabbit hole, is like they want to kill all those people because they're useless. And then you have a smaller group of people that actually want to do something that are more controllable in the world. Fast forward to today, like this year or last year, and there's this guy who's part of the World Economic Forum who's quoted over and over live. You can watch these videos of him. And he doesn't say useless eater, but he says the elite will use these people to push information to them. They're not doing anything anyway. So what they will be doing in the future is taking pharmaceutical drugs and playing video games. Like that's the lifestyle that he envisions for the mass of humanity, because there's nothing for them to do. And if you really believe that there's nothing out there for you to do because of consuming media that tells you that, then that's probably where you'll head. But if you imagine that there's this huge wide world of possibility, and literally sitting in your bedroom and meditating is probably going to gain you more information, not just spiritually, but materially, than being connected to the World Wide Web of the internet.
Okay, so let's just back up a little bit. When you first started talking about video games, first-person shooter came to my mind. And I really want to go into that because, and like our kids are laughing about it, but it's actually not a joke. And it's really violent by nature, by design. So did you play Duck Hunt? Did you play the first person shooter? I mean, Duck Hunt, that was the first one that I remember. And I would play that with my brother. And it's harmless, right? Like we're just shooting some ducks and the little dog pops up.
It went from shooting ducks to shooting aliens to now shooting humans.
Well, zombies too.
Yeah.
Zombie-ish, like humans.
Non-human things.
Yeah.
To now we're shooting humans like Call of Duty. And the best way to do it is like a headshot. So we're training young kids how to shoot other humans over and over in war in the head. And then we wonder, like, how are people so desensitized to violence nowadays? So between the movies and the video games of having people actively participate in shooting and killing of other quote unquote people, they say it's just a video game, right? But if you think about the book, which I read the book, now there's a movie called Ender's Game. And in Ender's Game, this boy was playing games with a group of other people. And at the same time he was playing these games, there was a real war going on. And he was supposedly training through these games for the war. And spoiler alert, but the end of the book is all those quote unquote games he was playing were actually real. So he thought he was playing a video game essentially, but he was actually directing real people to be shot and killed and battle each other. That was Ender's Game, was like he was actually in a game, in a simulation, but directing things in the real world that had real implications. And so I was thinking to myself the other day, like, what if all these first-person shooter games are collecting data through an AI, because they're all connected to the internet now. Your Xbox has to be online. It can't be offline. So they're collecting real-world data on war and killing, And they're analyzing that data over and over to find out how to kill people most efficiently, how to battle more efficiently. And maybe when they find the best players of those games, maybe those are the generals for the modern army that are directing real troops because it's connected to the internet to keep it live, quote unquote. How would we ever know? So that's just something that was like, well, do you think maybe the Ender's Game was kind of a tip of the hat of like all those video games you're playing that you think are fake might have real world implications?
I'm just sitting in here like crawling in my skin as you're talking about this because I've never read the book and I didn't even know like of the concept. Do you know the concept already? And Fielding, you read the book?
I'm actually gonna get it this weekend.
Oh, okay. But you saw the
He
movie.
saw the movie.
Oh, you saw the movie. Okay. So the Ender's Game and even just, you know, bringing that into like school shootings and, you know, like all this other first person shooter. Do you guys even know that term, first person shooter? Do you know that's what you're doing when you're playing Call of Duty?
That's why it's called a first-person shooter
You're
game.
in
Yeah.
first
I mean,
person.
I wasn't even aware of the term. And so like I'm very protective of what I watch or what I know. But I mean, this is alarming information. And you guys, I'm going to go into a little bit of my story right now. And I have personal experience with that game Call of Duty. And Fielding, I think this is important information for you to hear too. So back when one of my children was being programmed, I found out that he was playing this game, and it was called COD at the time, right? So Call of Duty, and I was like, oh, what is that? Like, as a, you know, active parent in my child's life, I went and I investigated, and then I was like, wait, and he wasn't playing it at my house, and so I was like, what is this game? I found out what he was playing, and I said no. I said 100%, you are not playing this game. I literally forbid him to play it, and I was told by my family that I was being crazy, that this was something that he wants to do and he's going to play it. And I was like, wait a minute, like you just, okay. So I was very confused by all of that. And I'm still working through some of that, that narcissism that runs rampant in our families. But I went and I did some research, you guys, and it talked about the desensitization to violence, right? Fielding, are you listening to this? Like the violent nature of that game in itself. And there's many others, right? I mean, this is just one. And I gave this paper like to people in my family, and I said, will you please read this? And you know what they did with it? They just took it and like threw it in the garbage. And I was like, wait a minute. This is a young child of 7 years old being programmed, right, to shoot other people. Or is COD other people or zombies? It's people.
It's robot, zombies, and people.
Robots, zombies, and people. Okay, what I remembered. This was a long time ago, so I thought I remember the zombie part. And I was like, wait a minute, like we're not playing this game. This is not whatever. So I let it go for a little bit, and I said no. And I thought the game was not being played by my son. And I come back and I find out a month later that he had been given the game as a gift, and he's been playing it the whole time. And I was like, I was mortified. I was terrified. I was so sad. I was mad. I had like all this cascade of feelings coming through. And then I was like defeated because it was programming him to teach him that whatever mom was saying was not important. And that actually is true. It transpired into like where we're at with our relationship today, which is super crazy. But it all started with this freaking video game and the violent nature of the video game. And I don't know how to even express my feelings toward how much people don't think about the future of their children. So in this case, it was like I was thinking about his future and how he would have relationships in the future and how he would relate to other people and, you know, like to animals and other things. People can be violent to animals too. And people can be violent to trees. People can be violent to all the things that are innocent in nature. And I just couldn't understand why somebody wouldn't be more careful about that, you know, like with a young child in their mind, because they wanted to be like, oh, And this is the part, like Thaddeus, we're just taking a little sidetrack here, but this is the part parents that I really want parents to understand and hear, is that you don't need to be their best friend and be like, oh, you can play this game because A, it's your babysitter, and B, it's okay for you to be shooting at people, right? And I'm just going to turn my blind eye to it, and I'm not going to teach you about how that works. So I do want your commentary, because all our kids play these video games. I prefer they don't play them. And how is it that we have become so lackadaisical in our parenting and in our society to allow this, to have this, when I say slow drip, right? It's been a slow drip, and it began with freaking Duck Hunt, and it's just been dripping more violence throughout our entire life, and we get to see it. You guys have only seen a small portion of it, right? But we've got to see a bigger view and a more observable view of it. And how does that play out into, like, where do we go from here with our kids? Like, how are parents supposed to, I mean, here's my question then, is like, how are parents supposed to protect our children from this shit and from all this violence? And I don't want to live in a world that's violent and, riddled with war. And like, is that what you guys want? Like, you want peace, right? And we all want peace. But how is it that we allow this and we're like, oh, it's okay. Oh, let's give it to our grandkids. Oh, it's not a big deal. And where do we go from here? Oh my God, I'm mad. Okay. Thaddeus. He's like, God, I don't know. He's like, she's scaring me now. I'm glad I'm scaring you if that's the case, because it's not okay. And parents, it's not okay. Why is it everybody thinks this is okay? Thaddeus, I'll let you talk now.
I don't know.
He's like, I don't want to talk now. But honestly, like, what's your commentary on where you at with your kids? We wanted to have a real conversation and be raw about, like, your kids play the game, right? They just started playing.
So I think number one, we should talk about solutions for the social media video game culture and what's coming. And around this specific issue, it has crept into everything from the video games, of course, but also all other media. So now we're showing like lots more on the news.
Lots more as in more violence or more war or what?
So we're showing lots more on the news in terms of like violence and graphic things that we wouldn't have shown before. And it's becoming shown in through movies as well.
Oh,
So
right.
movies are extremely violent compared to what they used to be, including kids' cartoons and novels, graphic novels and things like that. The Marvel franchise is one of the biggest ones, and that's like nonstop violence as well. So I think the culture of violence is being just pushed everywhere. So I don't feel like there's a way to hide your kids from that, unless you're going to be Amish, that they're going to experience that because they go to friends' houses and they go to school.
You guys want to be Amish? You don't? Okay, they go to friends' houses.
I lost where I was going with that one.
There's no way to get around it. Then you have to be Amish, or they're going to go to friends' houses in school.
So I lost my train of thought on that one.
Oh, I'm sorry, babe. I was just curious if the children were interested in, living a life closer to nature.
I think it would be interesting to try for a day to see how it is, but I wouldn't want to live like that for like years upon years.
So I think the solution for that is to make sure that they're aware of what they're consuming, that they're aware that that consumption leads to future choices and how those choices affect them, and really helping them understand, helping all of us understand how to disengage and think very deeply about the things that we want in our lives. So for example, my personal opinion is that there necessarily need not be war. And anytime that there is like a quote unquote war or some kind of a battle, right? It's humans killing other humans. And in the real world, like why do I feel okay killing somebody else because a one person in their country has a different political view than I do. I don't know what the political view is of the people on the battlefield. They could all have the same political view, but because the leader of their country has a different political view of our leader, we go and we kill them or fight them. And it's really just other humans that you are signing up to kill because they're wearing a different color shirt. They're wearing blue, we're wearing green. We need to kill all the people that are wearing blue. I believe that if we weren't so desensitized to all of the video game and the movie propaganda, we might question, which is what my family actually did during the Vietnam War, is they decided not to go, and they were put into military prison because they decided not to go and kill other people. So because that was a draft, they were drafted in, they didn't want to kill people, so they said no. And that is what you can do if you don't feel that it's right. Like, it's people like us that are going and killing others on orders from people that aren't part of that battlefield. So if someone tells you to go kill another person, you can always say no. Like, that is your choice as a human to decide that you don't want to participate in that, and that you have the ability to say no. And I think with the way that the culture is moving is people aren't going to understand that they have the ability to say no.
So, okay, so address the children side of that. So how do we move forward with our kids, right? And we talked about this in the sauna this morning. Like, it's their choice. I'd like you to speak around that a little bit.
What's their choice?
Their path, their choice. Like, what are they going to do? They're going to sit and play video games with their friends. They're going to isolate themselves. They're going to go down the path and have their brains rented, right? And that's what we talk about. Their brains are getting hijacked or rented, and they're going to make a decision. And this is how you guys are going to live your life. You're going to let your life be lived for you, right? And then what can us as parents that are like under the veil, right, of knowledge about this stuff, like how do we move forward and detach from that and be like, if that's their path? So maybe talk a little bit more esoterically about that.
Well, everybody has free will. Everybody. And you always have the ability to do something different than what's being pushed in front of you. And so I just think for us, our goal is to make sure that our kids are aware of that, and to make sure they're aware of what the media is doing to them. And then they have to make their choices. Like, they can be aware of it and keep going down that road. And then that is the path that they've chosen. And they have to deal with that. That's not for me. I'm not their spiritual director. I can provide them with knowledge. I can provide them with as much as I can and different experiences. But ultimately, I wouldn't want my mother telling me how I need to live my life, because it probably wouldn't jive with the way I want to live it. So I think that's the same with our kids. Like, they ultimately get to be the deciders and make the choices, because they are infinite awareness, just like we are. And some of that awareness is being constrained. And as long as they're aware, it's more of a challenge today, I think, than ever to break free of some of those things, because with all the knowledge that's freely available, the programming is so much stronger now. So I do think it's more challenging in this generation to break free and to really find out where they want to head on their own and spend time by themselves and with themselves to figure that out without the media and the technology. But those are the opportunities that they can choose to take. And I don't think it's up to me to make that choice for them.
I would agree with you, but I'm also going to disagree with you, because there's something that I read in the Celestine prophecy, in the woman toward the end of the book was talking about, it actually is your number one role as a parent to be their spiritual guide first, and to do that for your children from the time they're babies, right, in time they're in utero, all the way up until then when you set them free. And I don't want to say like it's your job to tell them what to do spiritually, because that's an unfolding of a life's journey, but it's the guidance, right, of the young children and the young mind of like, what would you guys do if it was your children, right? And how would you train training isn't the right word, guidance. I think guidance is the best descriptor. But like, how do you guide your children from the time they're little? Because what we do in our society, like there's so many places that are that don't work, right? Like we hand them off to other people to have them train and guide our children for us. So we really don't get that option. Mom and dad are both working. Grandma raises the kid, daycare raises your kid, and you're giving that power away to like other people. And in the Celestine prophecy, I'll just come back around to that, is she says no. She's like, this soul came to earth, and it's for me to, put some big warm fuzzy arms around them and guide them into a spiritual life. And that's my number one goal, purpose here, to bring another life to this planet or to this realm. And we're very far away from that, right? And I think other cultures, more indigenous cultures, probably do that much better than we do. So how do we, as American parents whose kids have already been put into these places and raised by perhaps other people or in ways that we weren't conscious of, right? And weren't in that much control of, or if we come from divorced families, like they get raised in two different households. So my disagreement is like, no, we do get to guide them spiritually, and then you get to let them go. But what do we do now, right? With the social dilemma. But Thaddeus, like, here's the part, like, I feel like this is a quest for our freedom, right? And our forefathers, my grandfather fought in Iwo Jima, and he wore a uniform, and he probably killed other people. I don't know. He died very young because he was so, I know you guys probably don't know this, but he was so riddled with anxiety from killing other humans, right? Like we have no concept of what he actually went through. But what I do know is that he smoked cigarettes all his entire life, and he would stay up late. My grandma actually told me this. He would stay up late at night and get up in the middle of the night and come downstairs in the kitchen to smoke cigs. And she said he would shake like this because he was so riddled with anxiety from what he was told to do and that what he did, right? And so he died when he was 40 years old. And that's so sad. Like my mom didn't even get to know her dad past the age of 18. And I mean, there's so much anxiety and depression and so many other things that our kids are dealing with right now, that have an unprecedented amount of kids. Tell me I'm wrong, you guys. Everybody that you know has anxiety, right? Everybody that you know has had some bouts with depression or social anxiety, like all these things. And I feel like we get like down to the core of it, like it's taking our children away from like their true essence and their spiritual like beingness of who they truly are. And it's hijacking and renting our children. Like you guys are being taken from us and from your spiritual world, right? And so like, what can we do about it? So I feel like, okay, my grandfather went to Iwo Jima to fight for our freedom, as did other people in this world who were told, right, that they're out to fight for our freedom. Are we not in that same position right now, Thaddeus? And like, I'm going to get emotional, but like fighting for our freedom in this social dilemma.
Yeah, I think that's a really good analogy of like, quote unquote, fighting for freedom of the past was with physical means. And today you're fighting for the freedom of your mind and the control of the mind control. Like break down the word government, govern to control, ment or mente is mind. Control mind is what government means. And that's what we're fighting for now, is to be free of the mind control and to be free of the capturing of your mind, which is entertainment. Enter to come within and to be held, and tain, like contain, and then ment. Again, there's that word mente, your mind. Your mind enters and is held within something that programs it. That's what the entertainment is, if you break down the word. So you have a mind control, and then you have a captured mind, which is your government and your entertainment. And we are now fighting more for the spirit and the mind than ever before.
I just need to breathe. I mean, honestly, it's scary to think about. You guys think about this in 10 years. Like, where are we going to be at?
So I think for what can people do with that knowledge? And
Yeah.
number one, it's like, don't invest all of your spare time in social media. Like, you need to get off. I'm not saying you need to leave social media, but you need to spend the time off social media in the real world with friends and with yourself, so that you can relearn how to focus your mind for hours at a time to learn a subject. Because how are you going to progress in this world if you don't have the ability to concentrate for long enough to learn a skill that you need to do the thing you want to do? Then all you can become is a consumer of small digital bites of information. So number one, it's like figuring out a way to leave those and not invest everything into them, knowing that the algorithms that are embedded in those social media platforms are there to, number one, addict you by giving you hits of brain chemicals like dopamine and adrenaline so that they burn up and you want more. And they are there to allow your mind to spend more time, the entertainment, to capture your mind. And they're designed to make you addicted to spending more time on that platform. The more time you spend on that platform, the more money they're going to make and the more minds they capture. Those platforms are free. You're not paying for TikTok and Facebook and Instagram. If a service is 100% free, then how do those companies make so many billions of dollars?
How do they?
Because they are capturing you in that platform with their marketing and advertising, and they are selling your data from all of that to others to build a profile on you.
Did you guys know that?
Data is worth more than money. So people don't trade in dollars anymore. They trade in data. That's the kind of money of the future, is data. And the cryptocurrency is basically different bits of the blockchain of data. So you need to be off those things as much as you can. Not that you can't use them, but you need to understand how they're being used against you and how they're being used in general. So you are going in with full knowledge. And I would argue you must, as I said earlier, spend focused time learning something that you value, that you are interested in, and that moves your life forward on the path that you want to move in.
Oh, that's so beautiful. All right. Is there anything else on your heart that you want to talk to, like maybe talk to some parents and how do we, okay, so like you spend a lot of time researching this stuff and listening to podcasts about this stuff. How do we move forward and educate other parents? Like, where can other parents go and people go in general to really, I mean, Crow 777 is a great vast container of knowledge about all this stuff, but really where do we go from here in learning about it? Like, is there a place that people, is there, like, what platform? You're like, I don't know, it's so new, right? Like, it's
You
so
need to not be on a platform. You need to
okay, so nature.
You need to figure it out on your own. By when we can quiet our mind enough. The spiritual masters of the past did not learn what they know from books and from the internet. So where did they learn it? Did Jesus read the Bible? No. Did Buddha read whatever, the Bhagavad Gita or whatever it was that that was written about his life? Like about all the gods? No, he didn't. These people did not learn to do what they did by being told how to do it.
Mm.
They learned it by spending enough time focused inward that they receive the information because it's already in us. And if we never take the time to look inside and spend time with ourselves, we will never access that information.
Oh, it's so beautiful. That's what I was looking for. Okay, I think we should do part 2 of this at some point. He's like, God, Heidi. But I don't know. I love my kids and I love being a parent, and I want more people to know about this stuff, but everybody finds out things when they're supposed to too. So, I don't know, you guys, let's all like take this in and think about it and see what it is you can do to share this information. And I mean, this is a preservation. This is a fight for our freedom. And let's go meditate, I guess. go out to nature and meditate. So that's a wrap. And Thaddeus, thank you so much for spending your Saturday with us and just like sharing all this information. Like, you guys, he doesn't have to do this, right? Like, I was in the children too. Like, thank you for being here, you guys, and paying attention and being present. And I hope you guys learned something, and I hope you guys can be on the forefront of teaching this to other people as well. And this is what my podcast is all about, you guys. This is not in health freedom. And we think about health freedom and we're like, oh, it's physical health, right? Well, that's actually, that's not the case. That's just part of the equation. Emotional health, mental health, it's all part of health freedom. And this is the preservation of that. And I know that's what's on my heart. So, all right, you guys, love you all. Thanks for joining.
All right, so those still on YouTube, podcast is wrapped. I'm going to turn this off.
Yep.
So one thing just to note for the YouTube audience, since we're here, is like, you really can go outside and get information from the sun. And if you don't believe that that's possible, how is it possible for your phone to send a photo to your friend's phone or your daughter's phone? That's invisible information that's transferred through the air. And that information, that's a photo. It's invisible. You basically dematerialize the photo. You sent it through the air on a light wave. So Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, or cell phone data is a light wave. We can't see that color of light, but it's all within the electromagnetic spectrum, which is all light. That light wave popped it onto your friend's phone, and it recreated or rendered that same photo that you sent. How did that happen? How did that information get passed on? Because it was sent and received and decoded and rendered. You can do the exact same thing with sunlight. That sunlight is packed with more information than we could ever try to break down. And each little photon of light coming from the sun, as you begin to get outside and start learning how to make use of that invisible information, that is where you will start to grow in your knowledge, not from watching 10,000 more TikTok videos.
Why do you say that on the podcast? Am I in cuckoo land? What's
I just
happening
thought
right
of
now?
it.
I'm like, where is he going with this? This is awesome. Also, that's brilliant. So he's saying you guys get out in the morning light and you can use that information to program yourself for good things and enlightenment, right? So Marijuana Jesus, I love that name. Just see a look on my kid's face right now. She says, I don't know if he or she, sorry. It's next to impossible to guard children when all the other parents are brainwashed. Absolutely. Like, how do we, you have to leave society, right? Like, it's not, not a reality for most of us. And then Polly says, all my favorite video games as a kid were insanely violent. Fielding, listen to this: Mortal Kombat, Doom, Wolfenstein, Quake, Blood. I know they desensitized me. They normalized murder and death.
Yeah, Doom and Quake, Duke Nukem, all those like old, very early games in the early 90s.
Yeah, but did you guys hear that last sentence? They normalized murder and death.
Just like the movies. Like, it's normal to see people getting shot in the head in movies. I didn't watch this movie, but John Wick, like, headshots all the time, people dying in every scene. And it's like, how is that normal? Like, what life do you live where you see people dying all the time? I have not seen anybody be shot and die ever. But that's what you're watching on TV as if it's normal. Same with the video games. So it's a little crazy. And
we also know somebody, I'm not going to like name anybody's names, but there's somebody that has come into our reality that was very excited, and they're not part of like my reality, but we just learned about them. But they said they were super excited when their kids became 6 years old, and that they could watch their first horror movie. What? Like when Thaddeus told me that, I literally almost had a nervous breakdown because like I just wrote a book on conscious parenting, and here's a parent saying, I am so excited that my kid can watch their first horror movie with me. Like, you should look on our kids' face right now.
We know adults,
our kids don't watch those.
We know adults that watch horror movies as kids, and it puts this like scary thing of the dark into your mind rather than like fun things in the dark. And so to this day, adults, when they travel for work, like freak out about staying in their hotel room at night by themselves because of the horror movies they saw. They get afraid. And as an adult, still being afraid of the dark, like these movies instill that into us, and they make it seem like it's like happening all the time that these scary things happen at dark.
Totally. That happened to me. My parents were like, go pick out any VHS tape that you want from Mr. Movies or whatever it was. And I would go pick out like Witchboard or like creepy stuff about, satanic stuff or whatever. And I watched those things, and you guys, I was terrified. I had insomnia as a teenager because of it. Are you leaving?
No.
What's happening right now?
Oh,
Oh, okay. And it has made me afraid of the dark. I mean, there's so many ramifications of things that we don't even realize later in your life, because my parents didn't teach me that. They were just like, oh, it's a free for all. Just go watch Children of the Corn as many times as you want. And all these creepy movies. And guess what? I wish that I freaking never watched any of that shit.
Right.
And that's why I protect you, Artie. Like, I protect you. Our 16-year-old and 12-year-old are in the room, you guys, because we wanted them to have this lesson. This is their unschooling on Saturday because they're not in school. And my daughter is unschooled in my own homeschool. But Polly says, yeah, I watched Nightmare on Elm Street. Oh my God, 8 years old.
I lived on Elm Street where Wes Craven lived at Clarkson University in Potsdam, New York.
What? Thaddeus, that's
where he
insane.
wrote the novels.
He said, legitimately, listen to this, Artie, legitimately terrified me for weeks.
Yeah.
Polly, it has terrified me my whole life. Like, I mean, same. Fielding is holding up a number 4. 4 in my leadership training. means I
31.
love
Oh,
you.
he's 13. He
Oh,
said
how
he was 12.
Oh, well, I was going to say something snarky, but I'm going to just love you up and be like, thank you for correcting me.
Peter, hey, good to see you, buddy.
Oh, yeah. Hey, Peter.
Aloha.
Aloha.
It's been a long time since we trained in martial arts in Michigan.
Oh, really?
Krav Maga.
Oh, really? Oh, cool.
Standing at the fair to get a elephant ear. That was always the Krav scenario. You're standing at the fair waiting to get your elephant ear, and somebody attacks you. What do? Talk about violence.
What? I don't know anything about that. But well, thank you guys for joining in and commenting and sharing and being vulnerable here too. Thaddeus and I have been on a little bit of a YouTube live hiatus, and I've been finishing my book and finishing up some leadership training, and we are moving into more content creation and making videos. Hey, we're going to make some shorts and some TikToks. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm putting a short
Just
up multiple times a day until it gets through. It's around the Gnostic view of the matrix we live in.
Oh, wait, you are doing that.
That'll be posted. And I just finished my book as well, and I'm in edit mode, which should take another week until I get done with that. There will be a little less
Tell everybody what it's
YouTube
about.
content creation. And once I'm done with that, it'll probably ramp up a little bit more as we move into cold season, at least for those of us in the northern latitudes. Oh, the book, I'm not till I'm done.
Oh, really?
When I complete it, I'm not one of those like, I'm going to write this, and other people can do that and they get it done.
Already wrote it.
But I work full time, and it's hard for me to get stuff done as efficiently as others. So anyway, when it's finished being edited and I'm ready to make the PDF and get it published to Amazon, I'll let you all know.
Awesome. All right, you guys. Well, if anybody has any other questions and has any more commentary, let us know. Thank you for sharing this time with us. And we're going to go out to nature and go for a hike with our puppy and our kids.
See you, everybody.
Get away from social media.
We're done.
Bye.
Go
Bye,
outside,
Joe.
everyone.
Yep.
Have fun.
You're welcome. Thanks, Polly.